Hey, how's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be talking about arrays, and this falls under the topic of data structures. Usually arrays are one of the preliminary data structures you learn in a class because it is like one of the most simplest to understand, but the applications really are endless because they can be used in a variety of different ways. So first, I'm just going to go over some attributes of arrays that you should know. First, what an array is, it's a collection of elements that have one data type. So what that means is when I make an array, as you'll see in a bit, um, I can't have in the array a bunch of integers, a bunch of strings, and a bunch of characters. I can only have one unique data type. So I can only have, let's say, like one entire array of ints or one entire array of strings. I can't have mix and match. And another attribute is the fact that it has to be a finite number of elements as well that you're dealing with. Finite number of elements. And I'll illustrate this in a bit. Okay, so a collection of elements of one unique data type. Say, for example, I was keeping track of a class of, let's say, 10 kids. So we've already established, and I want to track their test scores for a certain test. So we've already established the data type. We want to work with integers, and we already have established the number of elements, which is 10, because we have 10 students that took the test. So right off the bat, I can make the array. It's gonna be pretty large, and then I'll have, let's say, someone got a 99, 100, 86. A 40, a 2, 97, a 93, give someone a 15, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then two more, we'll do 91, and then 54. Pretty spread out grades. And so what the length of our array is the amount of elements in it. Or if you want to visualize it more, the amount of boxes we have in the array. So how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our length is 10. But something interesting about arrays is that we use indexing when we're referring to them and when we're programming them. So if I want to say this whole array is called temp, right? If I want to access 99, which is the first element, I would do temp 0. Which gives me would give me 99. So this is how indexing works. So the array works like this, and it goes up to 9 because if you start at 0, you're gonna have 1 less than the length as your last element, which is 9. So just understand the difference between length and indexing when working with arrays, and we'll do an example of this in a bit. But so if I want to access the last element, I would do temp 9. And that would give me 54. So I hope that made sense. I hope you guys understand the difference between length and indexing, because that's one of the most important parts of working with arrays. But now I'm going to go over declaring and initializing an array. And the most important part of this part of the video is trying to understand the difference between what it means to declare and what it means to initialize. So I'll do two different ways you can do this. So the first way illustrates really well the difference between declaring and initializing. So first, I'm going to do int, these two brackets facing each other, and then let's say we want to make temp, right? Temp. What this line of code is doing is just declaring an array of ints called temp. And this is the Java syntax. Obviously, I'm pretty sure for other languages it's the same, but you can look that up for specifically. But just to get the point across, what this is doing is creating an array of integers called temp, and then to initialize this, I need to do, okay, I want to get that array of integers, and I'm going to do new int, and then in these brackets, I would have the length. Say I have 10 kids, so 10. And this initializes it. So this makes the array without values in it. So it just makes 10 boxes in a row. To put the values in, I would do temp. Say I want the first value to be, what is it? or I messed up, 1 sec. Temp 0, which is the first index, or the first element at the 0th index, and I want that to be 99, as it is in my example. And then you can do that for every single one, and the last one, temp 9, is equal to 54, and that would make my array. That's one way I can declare and initialize. Obviously, if you have a large data set, like of 200, you don't want to go through and do each one individually, do temp 0, temp 77, temp 86. You don't want to do all that individually. So people create, it's more efficient to create a for loop and go through it, which I'll show you ways to apply a for loop to arrays in a bit. But let me just go over the second way to declare and initialize before I do that. So the second way is if you know the exact data in, and if you have enough time, you can just put it into your declaration statement. So let me illustrate that. So I would have int, the same brackets as before, temp, and then equals curly braces, and then my exact value. So I could put in 99, comma 100, comma 86, and then I don't want to write out all of them, all the way to my last element, 54. And what this is going to do, it's going to create this array up here straight away. And this declares and initializes it in one statement. So that's one way you could do it. But obviously, if you have a large data set, like I said, it's really it'd be tedious to write every single element in a row separated by commas. So yeah, there's easier ways to do it, like going through a file or something. But now I'm gonna go over one of the most important applications, is using an array with a for loop. So I'm just do a quick pseudocode type example. Pretty much works for any language. So I would have my for loop, and I create an integer I, as you would do with any for loop, and it's gonna be I is gonna go until it's less than. It's gonna stop. The for loop is gonna stop when I is less than temp.length, right? And once you look at the picture from above, like that makes perfect sense, because if you look at this array right here, if I'm going to stop at I when I is equal to length, so our for loop is pretty much saying that I has to be less than 10 for the for loop to actually run, for whatever's inside the for loop to run. And once we get to 9, we increment and we get 10, and 10 is not less than 10. So we end our for loop, which, as you can see, it makes working with arrays and for loops very easy. And then we do I++. And then inside our for loop, we're going to just print each element of the array. And to access each element, like we discussed before, you just do temp, and in brackets put the number of the index that you want the element for. And pretty much what this is going to do is just print out each element of the array. Now I'm going to go over some code I wrote to find that in which I declared and initialized an array, and from that array I found the max, the min, and the average. Now if you guys want to try this before I go over the example, go ahead, and then you can compare with mine. Okay, I did this in Eclipse, but you can do this in any programming language and just compare, just make sure you got the right answer. So I made a random temp array with 10 test scores in it, and I'm just going to find the max, the min, and the average. So first, like we discussed, I know the values, so I can just declare and initialize the array straight up. And then to find the max, I make a temp variable called max, and then I just go through the for loop. And remember, it's the same case every time you want to go through the for loop. I'm literally just making I equal to 0, or you can make that any variable, obviously, and it's just going to go to I less than temp.length. And once you understand, I hope I illustrated it well in the pictures, just try to understand how that makes sense. You start at 0, and the indexing of the array works perfectly with the length, where it's just one, it's the last index is 1 minus the length. And then all you have to do is find the max is each element of the array. You have to see if it's greater than the max value that's there already, and if it is, you make that the max. For min, you make the first element equal to the min, and then from there on, if there's any value less than that, you make that the min. And then finally, for average, all you're doing is creating temp variables average and sum, and from there you're going through the array and you're adding each element of the array up, and you're getting a large sum. You're pretty much summing the whole array and then using that sum and dividing it by the number of elements in the temp array, and that's your average, and then you're printing out your results. So I already ran it, but let's see again. So we got max 99, min 3, and average 57, which makes perfect sense up here. 99 is the largest number, 3 is the smallest number, and I made the data set pretty even, so we got a pretty close to 50 average, so the program works. And you guys should try other problems using arrays. Like for one of my class projects, we had one where you had to find the 2 largest numbers in an array. So things like that, just challenging yourself to use arrays to find different useful data out of a certain collection of elements is, it'll be useful for you in the future and help you out in exams and whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time.